All right, welcome back, everybody, to First and 10. I'm Josh Rodriguez, your host. It's been a couple weeks. I'm excited to talk about the playoffs today, and we're going to get into talking about the individual teams first. And then at the very end of the show, we'll go through the predictions. So without any further delay, let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and jump right into the Crimson Tide. So if I was to describe Alabama's season in a couple words, I would say dramatic comes to mind, and also resilient. And the reason I say that is because if you're a Tide fan, you know how it ended. You guys had the Iron Bowl and getting into the SEC championship game, then that amazing game that was played, and then all of the things that happened beforehand with resilience. So that would be losing to Texas. You know, Texas comes into your house. They really take you guys behind the woodshed. I mean, they outscore you guys, I think it was 21-8 in the fourth quarter. Then after that game happens, you travel down to South Florida and you play a decent South Florida team. We probably thought they were a little worse than they were. They ended up being a little better than what we thought. You go down there, you play them, and it's not a good showing. The offense looks anemic, and it just was really, really, really bad. You had a benching of Jalen Milroe that happened. All of a sudden, things are looking pretty, I would say, bleak at that point in the season. And then all of a sudden, you know, Jalen Milroe comes back. You figure he's your guy. You get a win over Ole Miss. You get a win over Tennessee, and then LSU, and you look like a completely different team. All the meanwhile, Texas is over here doing what they're doing and winning games. They do lose to Oklahoma and all that, but Texas still, we didn't know how good they were, but as the season went on, they started to look better, so that loss looked a lot less worse. But you did have a Texas ceiling there if you're thinking, you know, the standard Alabama's national championship, SEC championship, playoffs. A lot of that was looking in doubt for most of the season. Those wins, as I stated before, especially I'll say that win over LSU, I think because we saw what Florida State did to LSU, and then, you know, LSU was a little bit of a hard read because the defense was so bad, but all in all, Alabama figured out and then looked dominant when they needed to in that one. And then Jalen Milroe just got better as the season went on. The secondary was stingy. The defense was stingy. I feel like there was just a lot of really good things that Alabama matured into, that they maybe didn't start as a team, but they matured into this team that then beats Georgia in the SEC championship. So what an incredible season if you're a Crimson Tide fan. You also have to look at if we're looking at the defense, they were really good, all except for one quarter against Texas. That fourth quarter against Texas, it just kind of got run down, and, you know, things didn't go their way. But you pull that quarter out, and the defense has really been on brand the entire time. So statistically speaking, you'll see on the screen, we've got some statistics there. Points a game, it kind of shows offense. You go points a game, yards per game, and all the way down, you can look down the list. But what really stands out is on the fourth down conversions, you're first. I mean, obviously there was a fourth down conversion in 31 yards there for the game in Auburn at Jordan Hare, so escaping that one was a fourth down. But there was also a couple other key fourth down conversions throughout the season. Red zone scoring, 7th. That's a big one. I think a lot of that has to do with when you have a quarterback that's a true dual threat quarterback like you have in Jalen Milroe. That is a difference maker, especially in the red zone. On defense, you can go through the one thing that you could look at and kind of pick at is the red zone defense is, 51st. But again, they show up when they need to, and I felt like as the season went on, they got better. And, you know, some of that is a product of just maturity and just growing up. You've got some dogs on that team for sure. So you've got Milroe, you've got Arnold, you've got McKinstry Downs, Dallas Turner, so as some of the key players. So the notable wins, these are some notable things from the team season. So best win was against Georgia. Worst loss, only loss I should say, was Texas, obviously. The best offense that Alabama played, LSU. Best defense they faced, Georgia. Run-pass balance is 51-49, so probably one of the most balanced teams in the entire playoff. And then the passer rating under pressure was about 90%, so 90.2%, which is, not bad, not great, but not bad. The kicking game is pretty good, so ranked 17th. And I think while UGA, was the reigning national champion for a few years there, I feel like what happened was Nick Saban and the Tide came back, and if you heard the pregame speech, they took back what was theirs. And now they look to get the national championship back. I think they're on a roll. To say that Georgia wasn't one of the best 4 teams in the country, I think you'd be mistaken. I think they've already proved that they could beat one of the best 4 teams in the country there. And so I'm looking forward to that prediction. But I could tell you this might be Nick Saban's best coaching job. You've heard me say this before. And I expect in this game he'll have them ready. And this is going to be what I think is a very hard-hitting physical game, probably one of the most physical games in college football this season, I think is coming up in the Rose Bowl. So that is your season in a nutshell for Alabama. All right, now Michigan. So the season in a nutshell, kind of 2 seasons really. I mean, besides the fact that you bookend the head coach being suspended, 3 games at the front, 3 games at the back. It started out dominant. Now, I didn't play really anybody for a while, but started out like incredibly dominant, very balanced looking. And then, of course, Signgate happened. And things got kind of weird for the program. I mean, no program in the entire country dealt with as many distractions as Michigan did. And, from Connor Stallions all the way to the firing coaches, head coach having to sit out, it's all over the news cycle, really off-field stuff. I mean, kind of on-field, off-field, but whatever, disciplinary. And just a cloud hanging over the head. Then, we see Penn State and everybody goes, okay. All right, maybe these guys are for real. That was Happy Valley, though. Like, not a good offense, not elite, but certainly you went in and controlled the game, and the defense played very well in a place where a lot of people don't win. Then you have the Maryland game, and it's kind of like, they had to survive that game. It was ugly. It was really about Maryland making a lot of mistakes, and it felt like going into that Ohio State game, you guys were going to get cooked. And, I predicted that you guys were going to get cooked. And then that happened, and you controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the ground game. Credit Ohio State's defense played a really good game, but, Michigan just, as you do, you just kind of strangled them and won the game. And here we are, undefeated, playoffs. You go into the Big Ten championship, 26-0 win. And, I'd said this before about Iowa and how good that Iowa defense is. That Iowa defense is one of the top-ranked defenses in the country without an offense to complement them. So these guys are on the field all the time. That tells you how good a defense that actually is. Now, that offense is horrible, and so that 26-0 victory, though, to me, still looks really good, putting up 26 points in a game. McCarthy, we got to talk about JJ a little bit. Coming into the season, probably one of the most hyped quarterbacks. Started the season, he was at the top or near the top of most people's Heisman ballots. Then Signgate happened, and then it's almost like he fell off a cliff a little bit. So you got to wonder what happened there. Still able to scramble, extend plays, still an accurate passer. And I don't know if part of that is the receiving core and then better defense you play down the stretch. I don't know exactly, what to make of all that. It's going to be really important that JJ gets back on track here in the playoffs because you're going to need him when you're playing against Alabama. But I will say this, Michigan, it's undisputable. You got one of the best defenses in the country, and I think they're going to need to show up big in this game. Now, if we go to the stats, statistically speaking here, so, points a game, 14th on offense and first. That's right. The best scoring defense in the country resides in Ann Arbor. Yards a game, again, stingy, second. Points play, first. It's like yards per play, fourth. It's all of the things point to elite defense. Third down percentage, red zone scoring tied for third. And then offensively, you're looking at 42nd in yards per play, but fifth in points per play. And then fourth down conversion, sixth. That's kind of I feel like those are important, obviously, third and fourth down. 16th, ranked 16th in third down, and again, sixth and fourth down, and 39th in scoring percentage. So not bad. Obviously, in the kicking game, has done well. All right, so the notables for Michigan. Best win? Yeah, you guessed it. Ohio State, right? That win against the Buckeyes, the game, right? Easy. Losses, none. Obviously undefeated. The best offense that you defended all year was Ohio State. The best defense that you faced all year was a stingy Penn State defense, and that was a good defense, and you played them on the road. So that's not to be forgotten. So that's really good stuff. I don't know if that's better than what Alabama dealt with, but it's still pretty good. Run, pass, balance. So 55% run, 45% pass. There was that Penn State game where I think you guys threw 8 passes. So you can run the ball and prefer to run the ball first, which is typical of a Jim Harbaugh team. Passer rating under pressure, 107.2. That's pretty good. That's up there. And then key players, McCarthy, Michael Barrett, Mike Sanderstill, if I'm pronouncing his name wrong. Sorry about that. And Junior Colson on the O-line. My final thoughts with Signgate mainly in the rearview mirror, and the rest of the Big Ten in the rearview mirror. I think you can finally focus on the task at hand, which Michigan has not had the luxury of. Now, there was just an allegation, a formal allegation received from Signgate from the NCAA. So again, another little cloud. But at this point, I'm pretty convinced that nothing is going to distract Michigan from this Alabama game and facing Nick Saban, the greatest coach of all time. I'm sure Harbaugh wants nothing more than to beat Nick Saban, win a national championship, and shut everybody up. So this is going to be interesting to see how this, we'll call it less distracted, Michigan team is going to be able to focus on this Rose Bowl and see what they have to do. That's it for Michigan for right now, and we'll get into the prediction in a minute. Texas. All right, Austin, Texas, what's going on? That's right, the Texas Longhorns. I mean, their season has to be described as, perseverance, next man up. I think a lot of people don't know, but in that Red River loss that they had, their center goes out on the second drive of the game, right? So they lose that game, and it's like everybody's kind of, not sure about Texas. Like, they had beaten Alabama, so we knew that, but wasn't looking good after that point. Then you go in the next game, and you lose Quinn Ewers, and it's starting to look a little bit bleak. So really that next man up mentality started there, and then later in the season, you got Jonathan Brooks goes down, C.J. Baxter comes in, and it's kind of crazy how galvanized that you showed. Similar to Florida State is the way that I kind of viewed that. Your team was just galvanized. You had other people that needed to step up, and they did, which shows the depth of roster that Texas has. The defense, they really did their part. Malik Murphy filled in. Now Malik is not available as he went into the transfer portal. So that is going to be something to look out for, I think, in the bowl game coming up, because if Ewers goes out, you got to be, you've got to not feel great about that if you're a Texas fan, but you're hoping he stays healthy. Now, we got to talk about the Ewers return, right? Very timely, through 317 yards in the game when he returned against TCU. And then, as I said, C.J. Baxter came in, filled in great for Jonathan Brooks after the injury. And you guys just have looked balanced, all just very balanced throughout. And so I've been really impressed with how Texas has recovered. Every time they've been up against a wall, they have answered the bell. You had the one loss, the one whoops. We're sitting outside looking in, and then we're able to get into the playoffs. So kudos to Texas. Kudos to Sark, who has really, coached masterfully this season. And winning a couple games with a backup quarterback, it's not easy. And now you got a really good Washington team that you're going to have to deal with. Now, statistically speaking, we have the offense looks really good. I mean, minus red zone scoring percentage, the offenses look pretty good. And then the other concern I would have is obviously the third down percentage has not been great. Defensively, though, I say the Texas defense has really shown up, and probably even more so than you see on the stat sheet, even though they've got some really good things going here. I just view their defense as even better. Now, you're going to have to be able to stop the run against a Washington team who runs the ball really well. But as far as Texas goes, again, points a game 13th, third down percentage, stopping the opponents on third down, second, and then red zone scoring tied with Michigan for third. And so statistically speaking, I think the Longhorns look pretty good on paper. And then the eye test, obviously, the Longhorns have looked really good. It'll be interesting to see how that defensive front goes against Washington. Now, notable wins. Alabama, very notable win. The loss, Oklahoma, forgivable. Forgivable. Looks more like more of an anomaly as the season went on. I had my doubts about Texas. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but I had my doubts about Texas. I picked against them a couple times. I did not think they were going to go to Ames and win. They did. And so, I think with that win, the defense really showed up in that win, and they really just stymied Iowa State, who had everything to play for in that game and was really motivated and really wanted to beat you guys. And you just shut out all the noise, went in, and took care of business, which was huge. Was huge. The best offense that you've defended was Oklahoma. Best defense that you faced, Alabama. Now, that's a pretty good defense, and let's not forget what you guys went down and did to that defense in Tuscaloosa. That fourth quarter, that was big. And it was a game that never really felt like it was out of control for Texas, but it did start to get there, trailing in the fourth quarter, and then you turn it on and really start hitting on all cylinders in the fourth quarter. Now, one thing that kind of, I think, stands out to me on the negative side for Texas is that passer rating under pressure. That's right, like just about 67% under pressure. That's a tough one. You're going to have to figure that out because that's a Washington team that will bring pressure. So that's something to look out for. Kicking game, looking solid. And then obviously Ewers, Sweat, Worthy, and Thompson, all key players to keep an eye on during the game. Those are players, basically, I think their performance, can have a significant outcome in that game. So my final thoughts on the Longhorns for the season. They've started out the season on a tear. They had the Red River hiccup, Ewers injury. The season looked like you guys were on borrowed time for a while. And I kind of mentioned that. But you survived with a good enough offense while Ewers was out and a next man up mentality. And the defense became the show. Ewers came back just in the nick of time down the stretch. Again, different team with Ewers in. Different team with Ewers in. And I think a more complete team. And you started to see that all the way to the Oklahoma State game where you guys just really boat race those guys. And that's how I feel Texas is hitting on all cylinders now. Relatively healthy, physical, nasty defense. And I'm excited for this Sugar Bowl matchup. So Longhorns, you got a lot of good things going for you heading into the Sugar Bowl. We'll get into the predictions later in the show. Now for your number 2 ranked Washington Huskies. That's right. Woof, woof. The Huskies this season, cardiac kids, battle tested. I say that because I feel like Husky fans, you guys made things way, way more dramatic than they needed to be. That's right. What do you call them? A pick me? Pick me, pick me. Look at me, look at me. Like we're playing this team we should totally kill, Arizona State, like a team you should just really have throttled, and you got to get a pick 6 and a red zone stop. That pick 6, that game was looking like it was going to get out of hand there, and you show up, right? Utah is hanging with you. Boom. All of a sudden, second half happens and you shut them out. And it's just a lot of these, the Arizona game, picked against you guys in the Arizona game. I picked against you 3 times this season. I picked against you guys 3 times this year. We'll get into a little bit of that later, but against Oregon State, against Arizona, and against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. I did pick you guys to win against Oregon at home. It's hard to pick a low point in that season for Washington, and so I'm just kind of going with that like ASU game as like maybe it was a little bit of a low point there, or the Arizona game after it came out that O'Dunes was injured and you guys dealt with you had some injury battles during the season, but you overcame them. And how do you say Rome Odunze, I think, is the best receiver in college football, and I think that was proven through his resilience through the season that you didn't hear about till the end, and just the way that he continued to perform. But you have wins over Oregon twice, the Arizona State, Utah, Arizona, OSU, WSU. All those wins were close games. So you're battle tested, right? The Apple Cup. I forgot about the Apple Cup, right? The Apple Cup, man. I mean, all the way down to that's a game that nobody felt Washington State should be in the game. And again, Cardiac kids just show up and win. You guys dominated the Pac-12 championship, and that was, I mean, I thought you were going to knock Oregon out in that first quarter, first half, really had them on the ropes, and then Oregon climbed all the way back in and lead. Was going to take a stranglehold on that game if they score on that possession and go up like 11. And again, you get the stop, come down, score. It's just, that's like, I would say, classic Washington this season. Penix and Odunze always answer the bell. Penix always making the right read when he needs to. The defense, bend but don't break. Braylon Trice, really good. Asa Turner, when he came back, safeties just got better and better. Cam Fabiculana, like that kid's a baller, a absolute baller, really good tackler, really sure of himself in defense, in coverage, and again, tackling. I think the disrespect, though, is real for Washington. You look statistically, you look at their offense, and you go down the list, and their offense is elite. Nobody's going to argue that the Washington offense is elite. It's kind of surprising to see their red zone scoring being like 61st, right? And their field goal percentage is 58th, but that's fine. That's not a huge deal when you've got an offensive as explosive as yours, right? So that red zone is less, it bothers me less because you guys hit on a lot of explosive plays. And so you're going to, that can happen. All right, the defensive side of the ball, I think, is where people get concerned with Washington. And you look at like the third down percentage allowed 85th. That's a tough one to look at right there. And then scoring is 51st. So this is a true bend but don't break. They've made very timely plays. The Washington defense makes very timely plays when they need to. And I think that's the bigger story here with the Huskies and why they were able to remain undefeated. They had a lot of close games, right? Because the defense is not elite, but it shows up when it needs to. It's like there's not a metric really that shows that. So notables for the Huskies. Beat Oregon twice, no losses. The best offense and defense that you faced were both Oregon. Your run-pass balance, you're about a 40-60 team. Passer rating under pressure, 71%. So not great. Not as good as I thought it would be. I was actually a little shocked when I saw that percentage. The kicking game has been pretty decent. Now, the key players are obviously, we've talked about Penix and Odunze, but Dylan Johnson, to me, he was the difference in the reason why they were undefeated and maybe not undefeated. I think they definitely drop a game if they don't have Dylan Johnson. They'll possibly drop 2 or 3 games if you don't have Dylan Johnson. I think he's that important. And, people might say, oh, well, you're just, no. I think Dylan Johnson is special. I think he's really good. And you watch the tackles that he breaks. You watch he'll surprise people with his speed, and he's just a very physical. Almost nobody brings him down with one defender, right? It usually takes multiple. He's breaking tackles. And then I've talked about Asa Turner, Braylon Trice, obviously guys too, and Muhammad in the secondary. The Huskies, you guys have had one of the only undefeated seasons in Pac-12 history. I think there's 2, right? In Pac-12 history, Oregon, and then you guys this year. I think that's fantastic. Dylan Johnson's 3rd in the conference in rushing. And I think Penix is the best quarterback in the country. I'll just go ahead and say I think he's the best pure passer in the country. And I think he is a guy that when the game's on the line, you want the ball in his hand. I think Kalen DeBoer, National Coach of the Year. Ryan Grubb, I think he's the best offensive coordinator in college football. They're going to need all of these things when they go play Texas. And this is going to be everything I think that the fans have wanted to see, especially Texas fans. You want that rematch. But Washington, I'm going to tell you, you've answered the bell every single year. So I'm excited to give this prediction coming up here next. Okay, the Rose Bowl. All right, we're going to look at the tail of the tape here real quick. So when the Alabama offense is on the field against the Michigan defense first, you can kind of see here. I mean, this looks like a little bit, you're going to get a little strength on strength if it comes down to a 4th down. 3rd down, you're looking at strength on strength. You look at these statistics and you go, man, Alabama's really good in a lot of spots and Michigan's defense really good. It's just something's going to have to give. something is going to have to give in this game. Then you go to the next and you look at when Michigan's offense is on the field against Alabama's defense, and it's the same type of deal. Something's got to give because these teams are very, very similar. They're very similar. They're very balanced. Michigan likes to run the ball first a little bit more, and they're going to be running into a very stout-tied defense. And so I have a few thoughts on this. I think Alabama is the standard still of college football. I love Kirby Smart, two-time defending national champions, the Nick Saban protege. But like I said, I love Kirby, but Kirby got sunned by Nick in that championship game. And that's because Nick is the GOAT. And Alabama is saying we're still the standard here in football. We're still the standard in college football. Now, a couple of things of note. Alabama entered that game with not a lot of pressure. That SEC championship game. They entered that game with not a lot of pressure. But they went in, they took care of business, they were very motivated. Now they're going to have to play with a little more pressure because they're playing a Michigan team that feels probably a little disrespected still and wants to go out and they want to prove a point against Alabama because here I am telling you how physical Alabama is, and Michigan's saying we're just as physical, we're more physical, we're better, right? Jalen Milroe, I think, is a difference maker with his feet in the red zone, in the run game. I think you have to account for him as a true dual threat quarterback. He's going to run your guy over, right? He's not going to shy away from contact. He's more like a running back when he runs, and he can throw it. So he is the epitome of dual threat, right? I don't like to get dual threat with guys that can run, but they always dive or slide or whatever. Like this guy will hit you. He'll dive and he'll slide, but he'll hit you. He will. If he has to get those tough yards, he will. And that's, to me, he's a true dual threat guy. The defense is on brand. They're stingy. The typical Saban defense, they're just stingy, tough up front, and they clamp down when they need to. The secondary is long, physical, really good. Michigan, well-rounded, very balanced, can run the ball down your throat. They proved that against Penn State. They ran the ball against Ohio State. Those are very physical fronts, and they dominated in the trenches. This is typical Harbaugh. He wants to really, really establish a run game, hit you with some play action. It's what he does. It's what he's done for years. The formula really hasn't changed there. The way they beat Ohio State, you've got to be concerned about it if you're Alabama. You just have to be concerned. Physically manhandled them. As the game went on, they just got better. They were able to establish the line of scrimmage more and more and more, and they're going to look to do the same thing against Alabama. I think they're going to try to hit a few more maybe in the passing game, right? And that's where McCarthy's going to have to be really good. I really think this game just comes down to the trenches. I think that's whoever gains control of the line of scrimmage, that's really who's going to win this game. I think with Jalen Milroe's ability to run is going to be the difference in this ball game. I think it's going to be how well can either Michigan stop him from running in short yardage situations, or is Jalen Milroe going to get his in the short yardage situations and keep the chains moving, right? So whoever establishes the run in this game, I think, is going to win. I actually had a really hard time picking this game, both games really, but I believe that Nick Saban, I'm not going to bet against him. I'm not going to do it again. I bet against him in the SEC championship. I think that's just a mistake, and I think he'll have his team ready to play a very physical game and win 21-17. So I've got the Tide going into the national championship game with a hard-fought victory, a very physical game, probably the most physical game we'll see all season, and again, heading to the national championship game with a 21-17 win. All right, and that brings us to the Sugar Bowl. That's right. You got the Washington Huskies, the Texas Longhorns, and this is going to be a highly entertaining football game. I look at the tail of the tape here when I put these two teams up. So when Texas on offense, Washington on defense, there is a pretty clear statistical advantage in Texas's favor. The one part maybe that does not favor Texas is that red zone scoring percentage. So we will see how that plays itself out. Everything else you look at, and you can kind of go down the list, and this just looks like big advantage Texas. The one thing I will say here is that Ewers can be susceptible to throwing interceptions, and Washington's defense is opportunistic. Their secondary will pick the ball off. They've got some good cover corners. Muhammad's especially good a lot of times, I think, in coverage. We'll see how he does against his Texas receivers. We're just going to leave it at that right now. I'm excited to see that battle take shape. The Washington offense now, when they go on the field versus the Texas defense, this to me, I look at and I look, wow, this is pretty even. The problem is I've seen Washington's offense when they're going up against a good defense, and they've answered the bell every time, where they seem to be the most focused when they need to be. They went down and they played this really good Arizona team that people didn't know was as good. We knew they were good, but people didn't know how good that Arizona team was, and they handled them from start to finish. The Oregon defense, they handled them. They almost knocked them out in the Pac-12 championship game early. Oregon thought they were going to come in and they were just going to stifle that UW offense, and it just didn't happen. It just did not happen. And so the Washington offense, if I look at this and I go, okay, against that Texas defense, to me it looks like, well, you guys are going to have all you can handle. I think Washington's used to that and is going to be able to handle it. But that Texas defense, let's talk about that. Like Texas front, it's going to be everything that Washington wants up front. Now, how that game happens in the trenches, we're going to find out. There's going to be some really good matchups. That Washington O-line really dominated Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. So we're going to see if that theme continues. And if that continues, and that means that Dillon Johnson is going to be able to run the rock, which means that's going to open up that passing game. So for Texas, you want to stop the run in this game, and that is going to be critical. And on offense for Texas offense is going to want to be able to establish some longer drives and keep that Washington offense off the field, I think, is how that should go. But that's not necessarily the way Texas does things. They will establish a run, though, and if you can establish a run against Washington, then you've got a much better chance at winning that football game. Now, the team strength, I would say Texas, more balanced team. Washington's a little more pass happy. I think, though, one of the keys to Washington, like I said already, is establishing that run game. People have not taken Dillon Johnson seriously. I think Dillon Johnson is going to have the full attention of their defense. So I expect that to be kind of a key in this game. One of the bigger things I think that goes probably a little bit unnoticed too is Sark's ability to game plan when he has time in between big matchups. Especially we saw that when he was with the Crimson Tide and they went down and they beat Ohio State in the national championship game. And, Sark just kind of did what he needed to do against a very good Ohio State defense. I view Sark as elite when it comes to game planning and when he has time. Now, Ryan Grubb on the other side, I also view as elite, and Kalen DeBoer, right? Those two guys together. So this is going to be, I expect some offensive fireworks in this game. At the end of the day, this was another hard game to pick, like a really hard game to pick, actually. Texas, I think, a 4.5-point favorite heading in. I've seen Washington come in as an underdog, and all they do every single time is exceed expectations. I bet against them several times. Oregon State, Arizona, the Pac-12 championship game. All games I thought that they would lose. It is really difficult for me to say that I'm going to pick against the Huskies again. I think Michael Penix Jr. is the best pure passer in college football. Rome Odunze, I think he's the best receiver in college football. I think their wide receiver group at Washington is the best wide receiver room in college football. I think Dillon Johnson is special. I think he's an NFL running back, and he's going to be a really good NFL running back. And again, mix that with the play calling. And so for me, I think that Washington is probably going to have too much experience for what Texas is going to be ready for. And Michael Penix Jr., I expect to make those plays, make the right reads, make the right throws. And so I think Washington wins. Now, if something funny happens, if I can tell you this, if both quarterbacks go out, if you were to lose both quarterbacks, I would give the advantage to Texas in this. Even without Malik Murphy, I would give the advantage to Texas. If one of the quarterbacks go out, I'm immediately the advantage swings, Okay. Now, if they're both in this game and they're both playing to their ability, which is what I'm expecting everybody to show up, I'm making this prediction based on all the players to show up. And I think that Washington's going to win a tight one, 38-35. I was back and forth. I had Texas at first. I thought Texas was going to win maybe by a touchdown. And just as I continue to replay what I've seen from Washington all year, I have no evidence that they will not play up to their competition and a little above, which is what they have done all season long. They've been in tight games, and they've won several tight games. And Texas has been in a couple tight games, but they lost a key one now. Again, they were missing their center for that game, and so there's a little bit of an asterisk there. But that's their prediction. I've got Washington advancing to the national championship game, 38-35, and having a meeting with the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right, thanks for watching, guys. That's all I've got for today. If you would do us a favor, smash that subscribe button. Follow us on our social media. Everything helps. We're on Apple and Spotify now. We also have long-form content on our podcast there. I had Jake Browning on preseason, and so his podcast is available talking about what's really interesting now is to watch Jake Browning go and doing what he's doing in the NFL, setting records. He's got the Bengals on the right path. And to hear how he was staying prepared for this moment, what he was doing, how he stayed prepared. We kind of take you all the way through from his youth days all the way up to where he was right before this season started. So if you haven't heard that one, that's a really good one. We've got a sports psychology professional on there, Gib Arnold, gives a lot of good stuff. So if you're, whatever you're doing, coaching, athlete, former athlete, parent of athlete, we've got some content for you. We also have one more. We've got Addie Housechild Willis, who was a former Team USA member. She's launched her podcast on the Sports Idol Nation channel, and hers is called Digging Deep with Addie. So if you have volleyball players in the house, I'd love to hear that content. We had Rob Browning, the St. Mary's coach, on. He was fantastic, and we've got more volleyball content going on there. Our next show will be the New Year's Six Games prediction show, and we'll have that next week for you. Have a very Merry Christmas. Please be safe out there. Spend a lot of time with your family. Eat a lot of food. Sports is in our DNA here at Sports Idol Nation, and we hope it's in yours too.